Welcome to another episode of NantenJex Talks, and this piece you can sort of view as an accompanying piece to the Nintendo in 2024 video that just came out. If you haven't seen it yet, I would highly recommend watching it to see what Nintendo was up to over the last year. It will cover all the games, events, etc. Go check it out. But for this video, we're going to look ahead and behind at the same time, as I try to give my predictions on what I think Nintendo are going to do in 2025. But I could just sit here and list off a bunch of stuff I sort of hope/expect to see, and that would be, easy, but I don't do things the easy way. Instead, what I wanted to do is to look back at 2017, when the original Nintendo Switch launched, and see if there's anything we can glean from that year and bring it forward to this year. Because I don't think they're that dissimilar, actually, when you go into it and you sort of look at the overall picture. There are definitely some differences, from the time the way Nintendo was back then compared to now, and we'll go over them. But I think it gives us a pretty good idea on what to expect from Nintendo's launch year for the Switch 2. But before I give my thoughts on what Nintendo is going to do in 2025, let's take a look at 2017, just very briefly. So overall, Nintendo released 32 games in 2017, which is a big number. But in reality, it's a bit of a misnomer. Yes, there technically were 32 games, but we can cut this number down quite easily. For example, there was Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Those are two separate games. Fire Emblem Warriors on the new 3DS and Fire Emblem Warriors on the Switch. And Breath of the Wild on Wii U and Breath of the Wild on Switch. That's 6 games, but really, that's 3 games, isn't it? So we can cut down that 32 number to 29. And then we can also do this again by looking at games like Tank Troopers and Miitopia, which did release in 2017 in the West, but they were already out in Japan. There was just a time lag between releases. And Nintendo doesn't tend to do that anymore, so outside of a really surprising Buddy Mission Bond localization, I can't see that happening. I mean, there aren't even any games that they could do that for, so we can cut down another 2 from that list. Then there were mobile games. Nintendo was much bigger on the mobile scene back in 2017 than they are now. Yes, they are still releasing mobile games. There were 2 last year, but it's definitely come down a lot, and it's usually just reserved for Pokemon at this point. Like, I don't think Nintendo's releasing a new mobile game in 2025 unless it's like Mario Kart Tour Complete. So we can remove those mobile games as well. That's another 3 down. Now we're on 24, and this is a bit more of a workable number, but even this number we can cut down a bit. See, in 2017 Nintendo released 4 eShop games, Bye Bye Box Boy, Snipper Clips, and then 2 Kirby games that were based on mini games from the 3DS Kirby titles, and how we're in a bit of a mode back then, as I don't know the better way to describe it, to take the mini games that they designed for these 3D Kirby games, the 3DS Kirby games, and then just make bigger versions of them, and then sell them on the eShop. And they don't really do that anymore, which means you can't really expect 2 random Kirby spin-off games dropping on the Switch this year. But Nintendo also still do eShop games, so we're not going to cut this out entirely. Instead, we're going to cut the 2 Kirby games out and bring our total number down to 22 games. This leaves us with 22 games from 2017, 12 of them being 3DS games and 10 of them being Switch games. Now, this doesn't mean that I think we're going to get 10 Switch 2 games and 12 Switch 1 games. I actually think we're going to get less Switch 2 games than that. And a big reason for that is because, well, the Switch 2 is launching later in the year than the Switch 1 did. The Switch 1 launched in March and only missed out on 2 months of 2017. I don't remember what year the Switch came out then. Whereas this is the Switch 2 probably won't be launching till June, late May at the earliest. So that's basically almost half a year gone. And so because of that, I think there's going to be less Switch 2 games in 2015. But I think the actual total games will still be 22. So let's just take 3 off of that 10, put it onto the 12. So that's 15 games for the Switch 1 and 12 games for the Switch 2. No, 12? 15 games for the Switch 1 and 7 games for the Switch 2. I cannot do math, apparently. Another reason for that is because there's not as much of a rush for Nintendo to like port their older games to the Switch 2 this time around. Back when it was the Wii U and the Switch, they weren't backwards compatible, so it made sense to bring games like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Pokken Tournament Deluxe from the Switch 1 from the Wii U over to the Switch 1, but there isn't a reason to really do that from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2. I do think some Switch 1 games will get enhancements, Breath of the Wild, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Splatoon 3, they could all get performance upgrades pretty easily, and then we might even see games like Mario Maker 2 get feature upgrades where they get mouse compatibility. Like, I could see that happening this year, and in fact, I'll put a list up right here on all the games that I think from the Switch 1 will get enhancements this year for the Switch 2. But I'm not going to count those as new releases because we don't really know what Nintendo's going to do with them. It could be a free update. It could be that they actually like re-release them and sell them as like special deluxe editions. It could be a weird mix of both of them where games like Breath of the Wild get special re-releases, but games like Mario Maker 2 are just an update. So yeah, I'm not going to include anything like that, and because of that, games like Pokken Tournament and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe don't really need to happen again on the Switch 2. But we're going to stick with the number 22 anyway. So let's actually get into the predictions now. Thank you for listening to my ramblings on trying to justify how I got to this number. Oh, and a special thank you to Pana from our Discord and their friend ralsrealest for some of the custom logos you're going to see over the course of this video. Links to both of their socials are down below. And from this 22, we can already cut off 6 games pretty easily, because we're already in 2025 and we know what games they've got coming up. In fact, one of them's released, Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, and then you got Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, you got Metroid Prime 4, you got Pokemon Legends Czar. Those are all Switch 1 games that we know are coming this year and are part of this 22 number, so that's 4 knocked off right there. And then we also know Mario Kart is coming out, it's probably the Switch 2 launch title, and it's probably a Switch 2 exclusive as well, so that's another one we can knock down off of this number. Now we're on 17. That's right, yes, I can do math. And there's actually one more game that we sort of know about and is probably this year, and that's the NSO playtest game that they did back in October, which, here's a little addendum to the 2024 video that someone pointed out in the comments. I actually completely forgot about the playtest game. It happened while I was abroad for work, so I completely missed being able to sign up for it, and then any coverage of it, that whole saga was while I was away, and so I didn't get a chance to write it down. I completely forgot about it, so it was gone from the 2024 video, but it should have been there. My mistake. I'll make sure it's in the 2025 video because I'm sure it will release this year. And it will probably release on the Switch 1. It will probably be available on both Switch 1 and Switch 2 because it's an NSO game. So that's one of our like downloadable eShop games and one of our Switch 1 games. So cool. That now actually leaves us with 16 games to work from. 6 of them being on the Switch 2, being exclusive for the Switch 2, and 10 of them being Switch 1 original games. So that's where we're at now for new stuff to talk about. And to start off this list, I'm actually going to just be open that there are rumours and leaks out there on certain games that are coming for both Switch 1 and Switch 2, and due to my work at Source Gaming, I'm not able to avoid hearing about them. And to be honest, 2 of them were already predictions anyway prior to hearing any sort of rumours and leaks and etc. Like, I was pretty confident that they were going to happen regardless. And then the third game, I probably would have predicted anyway, just based on the 2017 data that I ended up looking up and researching, because it actually just really nicely aligns with what Nintendo did back in the Switch 1 launch. So these games are a 3D Mario, super obvious, Switch 2 exclusive title. It's probably going to be their big holiday game of this year. And then there's the Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War remake, which has been long rumoured at this point. It makes sense. We got Shadows of Valentia back in 2017 on the 3DS. Getting the next Fire Emblem remake from that team is as the final year of the Switch 1. It makes a ton of sense. And then Kirby Planet Robobot is the third one, which is a smaller Kirby game because it's a remaster. I mean, it's a mainline Kirby game, but it's not like Forgotten Land 2, which is what I think we'll get in 2026. And that sort of lines up with what happened in 2017, where we got Kirby Battle Royale as the new Kirby game. And then in 2018, we got Kirby Star Allies, which is the next main game. We're just seeing the same thing happen again. We're getting Planet Robobot HD this year, because that's like the most popular Kirby game, and it makes sense to remake it. You couldn't really, they're not releasing 3DS games on NSO, so you may as well remake that one. So that can be the small Kirby game for this year, and then Forgotten Land 2, or whatever they call it, will be the big Kirby game and come out next year. So yeah, 3D Mario for Switch 2, Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War for Switch 1, and Kirby Planet Robobot HD for Switch 1. So cool, that's 3 more games down. And let's cut one more game out here, because it's a bit of a boring option, but I do think it's going to happen. And that's Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope Gold Edition. Editing Josh here. So it turns out that Ubisoft already released a Gold Edition for Sparks of Hope with all the DLC on the Nintendo Switch. So this section is now invalid. Whoopsie. While I wouldn't put it past Ubisoft to re-release Mario plus Rabbids again, like as a physical, and market it as a Switch 2 title, I don't think I want to count it here as a new release. So we're just going to knock the number down from 22 to 21. But I'm sure Mario plus Rabbids, at least Sparks of Hope, will have like a Switch 2 enhanced version. So you can just add that to the list. While I'm here, I also realised that I forgot to record one of the sections for one of the games I expect to be on Switch 1 and Switch 2. So I'll just do that quickly here. I think we might see a Dr. Mario game show up this year as part of Mario's anniversary stuff, which I'm going to be talking about in a second. Presumably it'll be by Arika. It could be another 99 game like they've been doing, or it could just be a new Dr. Mario game that has elements from Dr. Mario World, Dr. Luigi, Dr. Mario Online. Just a new entry in that series, so add that to the tally. Okay, anyway, back to Video Josh. And okay, let's start with just the Switch 1 games that I think are going to happen this year. So, first of all, let's talk about Mario, because it's Mario's 40th anniversary. I think that's what Mario Kart and the 3D Mario are here to celebrate as well. It's going to be a big celebration for Nintendo, and there's going to be more games than just those two. And I think the rest of the Mario anniversary games are all going to be Switch 1 games. They can then be played on Switch 2 as well. And to start off with the two simplest options, there is Super Mario 35 and Mario 3D All-Stars, both getting re-released. Now these aren't new games, I get that. And I think they will be when they come out, because I think Nintendo are going to do a, like, Super Mario 40, which just technically makes it a new game. And I think they're also going to do Mario 3D All-Stars plus Super Mario Galaxy 2, because everyone talked about how that game should have been there, and I'm pretty sure Nintendo heard it, and wouldn't be the first time they've done something like this, because the original Super Mario All-Stars got an upgraded version that was Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World. They're just doing the same thing now with Super Mario 3D All-Stars plus Mario Galaxy 2. Now don't worry for those who did buy Super Mario All-Stars originally, like myself. I'm sure Nintendo will offer us a way to get Super Mario Galaxy 2 on its own, whether that's as DLC or its own separate eShop only downloads. If you want it physical, you have to get the new 3D All-Stars collection, but if you want it download, you can just download it. I'm sure Nintendo's going to have some way so that everyone can get Mario Galaxy 2, which also means I'm going to count this actually as 2 releases, Mario 3D All-Stars Plus and Super Mario Galaxy 2, 2 separate releases, both on the Switch 1. So I see that happening this year, and then there's going to be another Mario game that's new, and this one is going to be the Mario Sports Game of the Year, Mario Baseball. So we've been getting sports games pretty consistently, and I was having a big debate over whether I think we would see Switch Sports 2 this year, or Mario Baseball this year. And I settled on Mario Baseball mainly because it's Mario's 40th anniversary, so it makes sense to have it be a part of the celebrations. And releasing 6 Mario games in 1 year, 7 if you include Donkey Kong Country, isn't that unheard of, given that last year, if you watch the 2024 video, They released like 5 Mario aligned games that year. And that wasn't even a special year for Mario. They just made half of their releases Mario games. So 6 this year, one of them being an eShop game, one of them being a re-release of 3D All-Stars. Yeah, that's like... they're not going to have an issue with that. And Switch Sports 2 can really just wait until next year. I think it's definitely happening, but I think it'll be a 2026 game. Doesn't have to be this year. So a Mario Baseball game. That works. And I think it's going to be Mario Baseball, not like another Mario Tennis game. Because instead, I think Camelot are going to be releasing a new Golden Sun. I don't think there's a reason to do another Mario Tennis game yet. And Camelot have expressed interest in doing Golden Sun. They've always talked about how the original 2 games did better because they were at launch years. And so for a while I thought it would probably be a Switch 2 title. But I don't know if Camelot would have access to a dev kit early enough to make it that. Like, I'm sure they have one now, maybe, now that it's been revealed. But I don't think they had one before. But I think that's fine because of Golden Sun being a Switch 1 game. There's access to the entire Switch player base. And then Nintendo will still push it as a Switch 2 title for the Switch 2 fans as well. So it can kind of like cheat and appear like it's a launch year game, even though it's really for the previous system. And Nintendo will do that to try and like get it more get more people to try and buy it, make it look bigger than it probably is. Now, is this a Golden Sun remake or a Golden Sun 4? Hard to say. If it's a remake, I say it's a remake of the original 2 games, and I could see it being a remake purely because Isaac and his friends are like the most popular part. Dark Dawn was not that popular. But they could make they could just decide to keep going. Like, the intention for the series was to have Matthew and friends be the main characters going forward, so they might just continue on with that. And I don't think that would be an issue for Dark Dawn, because I've seen some people maybe suggest that if they don't re-release Dark Dawn first, then people are going to be confused in the story. I think Nintendo has a way of dealing with that, but I'll explain that at the very end. Alright, now let's talk about the Warriors games. So 2017 obviously got Fire Emblem Warriors, and they've been pretty consistent throughout the Switch generation. We got another Hyrule Warriors, and we got another Fire Emblem Warriors. So it's about time for another Warriors game. And it could be Hyrule Warriors again. They could do a Tears of the Kingdom equivalent to Hyrule Warriors. But I want them to do something new. I want them to go for a new series. And I think they're going to go for Xenoblade. So Xenoblade already aesthetically fits quite well into the Warriors like setup. But Xenoblade Chronicles 3 gave us the perfect setting for a Warriors game. It's literally about 2 nations at war with each other, with then, secret factions lurking in the dark to mess things up with. So it's like right there. It's also got a massive cast of characters that they can pull from to make loads of playable characters. So it's almost like perfectly set up to have a Warriors spin-off. And also, just another sort of tie-in for it, and this one's going to be as spoiler-free as possible. Don't you think it's odd how there were 3 babies in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and yet we only ended up seeing 2 of them, one in the main game and one in the DLC, Future Redeemed? Why is there a 3rd baby and then we've never heard or seen from it at all? Well, maybe they could end up being the original protagonist of this Warriors game, because the Koei Tecmo like to do that. Maybe this has been set up for a while, and the game will let you pick which army you want to join as this original character, and then it ties back into the wider story, because that's what they did with 3 Hopes and Age of Calamity as well. They tried to tie it into their main game, so just saying. Okay, but that leaves us with one final Switch 1 game, and I think we're going to see Wind Waker HD finally. Like, it's going to be based on the Wii U version specifically, brought forward as remaster. Nintendo have been pretty consistently trying to get Zelda out every single year, and the only year they missed in the Switch generation was 2022, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Tears of the Kingdom was meant to be a 2022 game and then just got delayed, causing everything else to sort of get pushed back along with it. So I fully expect something Zelda to drop next year, but we just got Echoes of Wisdom from Grezzo, so I'm not expecting a game from them. It's way too early for Tears of the Kingdom. And while we could get a Hyrule Warriors game, like I just sort of explained that I kind of expect a Xenoblade Warriors instead. So that just leaves it to be a remaster or a remake of a previous game. And I think they're going to go the easy route and put Wind Waker HD finally on the Nintendo Switch. I don't think we're getting Twilight Princess yet. I do think it's coming, but I think Nintendo sort of realised they don't have to do them together like people wanted. They could just easily separate them by a year and have Twilight Princess HD be in 2026, and then the new 3D Zelda in 2027. Like, I don't see any reason why Nintendo wouldn't think that's a good idea, so given their past track record. So there we go. I think Wind Waker HD is finally happening. Okay, but that does it for the Switch 1 games. So what about those Switch 2 exclusives? Well, if you've been doing the math, counting along, there's only 4 games left on my list. And of those 4 games, I think the most likely one is some random new gimmick IP that we have no idea what it's going to be, but it will be there at launch alongside Mario Kart, and it will make use of the mouse as its like primary control scheme. The 1-2 Switch, the Nintendo Land, the Wii Sports of this system. There's always one, it's almost always a new IP. So that's just, I expect another one. So that's going to be one of the games. Then from the other 3, I think Ring Fit Adventure 2 is probably quite likely. The original was very successful, but a problem with the new Joy-Con sizes is that they just won't fit in the old rings. So it sort of makes sense to bring out a new Ring-Con that fits the new Joy-Con. And I can see an argument against doing Ring Fit Adventure 2 too soon after the Switch 2 launches, because that's releasing another peripheral for people to buy. But I don't think Nintendo's massively bothered. I think they might see it as more advantageous to get a successor out there, to get a new Ring-Con out there for people who do still play Ring Fit Adventure and want to upgrade. And I think if you wait until like December, the winter months, which is the ideal time for a game like this, that's half a year has passed at that point. I think half a year on, they're not going to be as bothered by that anymore. So Ring Fit Adventure 2, I think it might even be the last game of this year, but I think it's definitely happening. So that leaves 2 more games, and it's not just Mario's anniversary next year, it's also Splatoon's anniversary. And while I do fully expect a Splatoon 3 enhanced version, like an update to drop, because they're going to keep Splatoon 3 as the main game, especially as I don't think Splatoon 4 is anytime soon, I do think we can get something Splatoon. Now, is this really going to be an anniversary thing and they like remake Splatoon 1 as like a one-off thing? It's got all the same physics and weapons and story mode of the first Splatoon, just a full-on remake, but released on the Switch too, so for people who really like that style? Or will it be a spin-off game? Like, I've always thought the idea of a Splatoon rhythm game or a Splatoon fashion game would be quite fun. And the series is definitely big enough to justify being able to get a spin-off. I mean, Pikmin got it at 3, they got Hey Pikmin, and that's a way smaller series compared to Splatoon, even if it's been around longer. So a Splatoon spin-off now to sort of fill in the gap between Splatoon 3 and the inevitable Splatoon 4, and doing it for the anniversary as well, like, yeah, that just seems really likely to me. So that leaves us with 1 game, and I tossed and turned over what this might be. I thought maybe Monolith Soft's new original IP that they've been teasing about for Lord knows how long, maybe that was going to come out, but then with 2 Xenoblade games already for this year, based on my predictions, maybe they'll hold off till next year. So, sort of put that one aside. I also thought maybe Star Fox could come back, but the people who are like the leads on Star Fox Zero are on the Mario Kart team, and we're obviously getting Mario Kart instead. So I don't think, in fact I fully expect the director of Star Fox Zero to be the director of Mario Kart 10. So we'll see when that one comes out, but that doesn't look good for Star Fox. And then I settled on Tomodachi Life, because that's a game that did really well on the 3DS, and somehow never got a sequel, and the team behind it have not really done a whole lot this last generation. The director, the lead director of Tomodachi Life, he worked on Miitomo in 2016 and then is uncredited in anything other than like giving some supervisory role on Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, presumably for all the Mii stuff, because the guy who directed Tomodachi Life is like the Mii guy. His name is Ryotaro Takahashi, and he was the guy who basically invented the Miis and has been the forerunner for every Mii game other than Miitopia. So I think a new Tomodachi Life could be a very likely candidate for a Switch 2 Year 1 game, especially if they bring over like the Mii Maker from Miitopia. Maybe not bring it over wholesale, but do something similar. Like, and we could be seeing an enhanced version of the Miis on the Switch 2, because I do wonder if part of the reason we haven't seen much from him this generation is because of Nintendo's just sort of attempts to ignore the Miis. It's been noted that they've been pushing away from the Mii branding for the entire Switch generation outside of Miitopia, but then Miitopia did really, really well, and then Switch Sports came out without the Miis, and everyone complained and wanted the Miis back, and Nintendo sort of had to re-add them back into the game. So yeah, those are my predictions for 2025 Nintendo. We'll see how many I get right. Now, before we go, there is one last prediction I want to make, and it's connected to NSO and what we might see from it this year. So there's been rumblings of a GameCube controller coming out for NSO, just like the 64 controllers and stuff, and that might heavily imply, I should really be honest, that GameCube NSO is something that's on the way. Now, I'm still 50-50 on this. I feel like if I was Nintendo and I knew people would buy GameCube games, like they have been doing with Metroid Prime and Pikmin, I would probably continue to try and sell GameCube games to them rather than putting them on for free for NSO. But, you know, maybe they will. Maybe they'll just do a weird version of NSO that has Luigi's Mansion and Mario Sunshine, and then all of their C-tier games like Geist and Eternal Darkness. And this GameCube controller is made for that. It's also possible that the GameCube controller is made so that people just have a GameCube controller that they can connect wirelessly to the Switch 2 instead of having to connect it through the USB. You know, the Wii U's Smash Brothers controller. The Wii U's GameCube adapter. Why can I not say that right? Like, then they don't have to make any of them anymore, if they even still are, and people can get GameCube controllers that just connect wirelessly. Like, it's a lot easier to do that. So I'm not necessarily sure it will be GameCube NSO, but I can see the argument for it. What I do think will happen, though, is DS NSO, because I think the mouse controls really solve a lot of the issues facing a DS NSO implementation. So I fully expect to see that this year. That goes back to the Golden Sun Dark Dawn thing. If Dark Dawn is like a launch title for DS NSO, then it's available for people to prick up and play before Golden Sun comes out later in the year, like a Golden Sun 4, and that solves the problem of people not having access to it. So I think DS NSO is very likely for this year. It might even be there on launch. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, that is actually everything that I think we'll see for Nintendo in 2025. I'm sure we won't have to wait very long. I feel like there's going to be a Switch 1 Direct in February, and it's going to knock off a lot of these Switch 1 games I brought up. And then when we get the Switch 2 launch Direct in April, I think most of the Switch 2 games I mentioned will probably be there as well. And yeah, that will be it. So I guess I'll only have to wait until April to find out if I'm right or wrong. So I hope you enjoyed these predictions, these ramblings of mine. And yeah, if you haven't watched the 2024 video, I would recommend watching that after this one and learning about how Nintendo's 2024 is, because I think we can look back at their history to learn what they're going to be doing in the future. Alright, enough of that. Thanks for watching.